Buckingham Palace loomed over London, its golden jeets and stoic guards masking a tempest brewing within its ancient walls. The silence tea had cloaked the palace was no mere absence of sound, it was a deliberate hush hashtag, a signal that something seismic was unfolding. When the palace fell quiet, it was never a sign of calm, it was the prelude to chaos. And now, that chaos swirled around Meghan Markle, a woman who had transformed from royal outsider to a formidable force holding the monarchy in a state of uneasy suspense. The whispers that once echoed through the royal corridors had grown into tremors, shaking the very foundations of the House of Windsor. This was no ordinary scandal, no petty snub at a gala, no tabloid critique of Meghan's wardrobe. According to those in the know, what was unfolding was deeper, darker, and teetering on the edge of catastrophic. At the heart of it all was a rumored vault, the collection of sensitive material that Meghan allegedly possessed. Not mere gossip or influence, but tangible, potentially damning evidence, files, videos, voice recordings, perhaps even surveillance footage. No one outside her inner circle knew its exact contents, but the mere suggestion of its existence had the palace walking on eggshells. The fear was palpable. A chilling undercurrent permeated every hush hashtag conversation among courtiers, legal advisors, and royal aides. Hashtag Meghan had become a spectre haunting the monarchy, her every move scrutinized for the potential to unleash chaos. The storm began to gather with the launch of Meghan's latest venture, a luxury alcohol brand named Rose. To the public, it appeared as just another celebrity cider hustle, a foray into the crowded world of branded spirits. But the timing of the launch sent shockwaves through the royal family. Meghan unveiled Rose on Princess Diana's birthday, a date sacred to both the public and the royals. Anna, whose tragic death in a car crash involved alcohol, was a figure of reverence, her memory guarded yearly by her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. For Meghan to launch an alcohol brand on that day was not just insensitive, it was, to many, a calculated front, a deliberate #8jab, at the heart of the royal family's most sacred wound. Prince William, sources revealed, was incandescent with rage. He and Harry had made a pact as boys, never exploit their #has legacy for personal gain. Yet Meghan's move seemed to do exactly that. The Netflix series produced by Harry and Meghan had a #ready raised eyebrows, leaning heavily on Diana's story to bolster their narrative of victimhood and rebellion. But this was different, a direct, public violation of a deeply personal promise, a betrayal that cut deeper than any tabloid headline. William's anger burned, but he remained silent. No press release, no subtle rebuke through palace channels. Absence of a response spoke volumes, and insiders pointed to one reason, the vault. Meghan, they claimed, had made it clear that crossing her would have consequences. The vault's contents, whatever they were, loomed as a silent threat, a sword of Damocles hanging over the monarchy. She didn't need to reveal them, the mere hint of their existence was enough to keep the palace in check. The fear wasn't about proof, it was about belief. And the belief that Meghan held something explosive had paralyzed the royal machinery. The palace, an institution built #T on centuries of tradition and control, found itself outmaneuvered by a woman who understood the power of narrative in the modern age. Meghan's ability to wield that narrative, through carefully timed product launches, media appearances, and strategic leaks, had turned her into a force unlike any the monarchy had faced before. Her critics called it manipulation, her supporters called it brilliance. But to those inside the palace, it was far more dangerous. A threat to the very survivor #L of #the crown. Every move she made seemed calculated #TO provoke, to dominate the conversation, to keep the royal family on edge. The launch of Rose was not just a product drop, it was a declaration of POW a reminder that Meghan held the upper hand. At the center of the maelstrom was Prince Harry, a man caught in a web of loyalty, guilt, and isolation. Those who had seen him recently described a stark transformation. Gone was the charismatic prink #E, who once charmed the world with his easy smile and quick wit. In his place was a shadow, thinner, fidgety, withdrawn. In interviews, he appeared detached, his responses halting and repetitive, his eyes carrying a glazed, distant look that spoke of a man unmore #ed. Speculation swirled. Was he medicated? Overwhelmed? Or simply trapped? Mega #N, some insiders suggested, had him cornered. Relocated to the United States, estranged from his family, without a job, and tethered to their young children, Harry was a man adrift, cut off from the life he once knew. Former aides painted a grim picture. He was emotionally wrecked, barely functioning, and increasingly isolated. Some believed he was complicit in Meghan's plans, willingly or otherwise, drawn into her orbit by love or loyalty. Others argued he was her persona, kept in line by the same leverage she #wielded over the palace. Theories abounded about had held him in place. Was it love, a lingering devotion to the woman he had defied a kingdom for? Fear of what Meghan might do if he walked away? Guilt over abandoning his royal duties? Or did he know too much about the vault to break free? One thing was certain, Harry was no longer in control. He had become a passenger in his own story, unraveling in plain sight, while Meghan steered the narrative with a steady, unrelenting hand. If King Charles's health reportedly faltering, whispers of incurable cancer had begun to circulate. Queen Camilla had stepped into the void. Once a peripheral #Gore in Harry's life, she had become a gatekeeper, her resolve unyielding as steel. Calls from Harry were screened, Meghan's overtures ignored. Palace staff whispered that Camilla was no longer protecting Harry, she was protecting the Crown from him. Camilla's actions were driven by a deep understanding of the stakes. She had seen the monarchy weather scandals before, from divorces to public betrayals, but this was different. Meghan's strategy, controlling the narrative, monetizing outrage, weaponizing grief, had pushed the royal family into uncharted territory. Camilla was bracing for a fight, not just for Crown's reputation, but for its very survival. Her steely determination was a stark contrast to the palace's usual measured responses, signaling a shift in the power dynamics within the royal household. Camilla, once a figure of controversy Ralph, had become the monarchy's last line of defense against a threat that seemed to grow more potent by the day. Her refusal to engage with Harry and Meghan directly was a calculated move, a signal that the palace was drawing a line in the sand. Meghan, meanwhile, showed no signs of relenting. Her next move was already in motion, another product launch, timed to coincide with a significant royal date, perhaps a wedding anniversary, or another sacred milestone. Palace insiders had coined a term for her strategy, reef marketing. It was a chillingly accurate description of her approach. The product itself, whether wine, skincare, or something else, was secondary. What mattered was the timing, the symbolism, and the outrage it provoked. Her critics labeled it narcissism, her supporters called it savvy branding. But those behind the scenes saw it for what it was, a power play. Meghan didn't need the Crown's approval, or its titles. She needed the spotlight, the clicks, the chaos. Every controversy why she ignited fueled her brand, turning even the most mundane product into a global headline. The Rose launch had set the template, exploit a royal date, stir outrage, and watch the media frenzy drive attention to her brand. Her next move promised to follow the same playbook, with insiders brassing for another calculated strike at the royal family's emotional core. Yet cracks were beginning to appear in her empire. Hollywood, once her playground, was growing wary. Invitations to high-profile events had dwindled, and brands were distancing themselves, cautious of her increasingly radioactive reputation. Even Netflix, once a steadfast ally, was reportedly reassessing their partnership after lackluster returns. Meghan's narrative, once a compelling tale of liberation from monarchy, was losing its luster. To the industry, she was no longer a trailblazer. She was a liability, a figure whose drama outweighed her marketability. The vault remained the wild card in #this high-stakes game. No one knew its full contents, but its existence, real or perceived, had altered the dynamics of power. Palace legal teams were on high alert, combing through old NDAs and money-to-ring communications with a vigilance born of fear. Some courtiers refused to discuss Harry or Meghan without a Whitney #SS present, terrified that a stray comment could end up in her next project. The paranoia was palpable, a suffocating presence in the palace's once confident halls. A former Sussex media co-consultant claimed the vault had been in the works since before Megxit became a household term. Voice memos, hidden camera footage, smart home recordings, even hotel security clips, none of it was confirmed, but the palace believed it was real, and that belief was enough to keep them on edge. The Vol #T wasn't just leverage. It was a ticking time bomb, a silent threat that grew more dangerous with each passing day. Meghan didn't need to open it to cause damage. She only needed the world to believe it existed. The palace's fear of what might be in those files had transformed their every decision, from public statements to private conversations. Legal advisors were working overtime, drafting contingency plans for scenarios they hoped would never come to pass. Some whispered about the nuclear option, stripping Harry and Meghan of their titles, a move that would sever the last formal ties to the monarchy. It was a step they dreaded, not only for its symbolic weight, but for the potential backlash it could provoke. One royal aide put it starkly: if that file #sees daylight, we'll need to burn the house to save the crown. As Meghan's star dimmed in Hollywood, whispers of separation, #W louder. Legal insiders in London reported discreet inquiries, nothing public, but real. Meghan, #sources claimed, was considering a solo memoir, one that would reframe her story as one of betrayal and triumph. Titles like Betrayal, Freedom, or The Truth About Him had been floated, each a pointed jab at Harry and the royal family. If a divorce were to happen, it would not be quiet. Meghan would publish, she would talk, she would own the narrative, reshaping the story of her marriage and her exit from the royal family into a tale of empowerment and vindication. And Harry, caught in the crossfire, would be both the story and the casualty. He knew what was in the vault, if it existed. If he pushed back, it wouldn't be just a breakup. It would be mutually assured destruction, a clash that could leave both their Asians in ruins. Former allies were beginning to distance themselves. James Holt, a longtime Sussex loyalist, was recently spotted engaging with posts tied to William's allies, a subtle but telling move. Royal watchers interpret #edit as a sign of fracture, a quiet cry or help, or a strategic retreat. If Meghan's empire collapsed, no one wanted to be caught in Tehe fallout. The palace was in crisis mode, its once impenetrable facade cracking under the strain. Communication teams had drafted statements they hope #D never to use, each one a carefully worded defense against a potential leak from the vault. Staff were on edge, aware that one misstep could trigger a catastrophe. Tehe monarchy, for all its history and grandeur, was at a crossroads. Meghan's playbook, exploiting emotion, hijacking symbolism, dominating the conversation, had exposed vulnerabilities the palace had never anticipated. The vault's shadow
His complaints are starting to feel like a broken
but Meghan's
record.
next move could
And
be the
each
true
time,
detonator.
the public reaction
A rumored product drop, tied to a Noth a royal milestone, was already stirring dread. It wasn't about the product, it was about the message. Grief marketing, as the palace called it, was a business model built on pain and provocation. Every launch, every controversy, fed the cycle of outrage, clicks, and coverage, keeping Meghan's brand alive even as her allies dwindled. But the tide was turning. Hollywood's power brokers were stepping back, their enthusiasm for her brand replaced by caught iron. Former
Instead of
allies were
pausing and
silent,
explaining
their
himself,
loyalty
Harry's
eroded by the growing
frustration
sense that
bubbled up.
#Egan's star was fading. Even Netflix, once a safe haven, was reassessing, their investment in the Sussexes no longer yielding the returns they had hoped for. Meghan's narrative, once free #SHA and compelling, was losing its edge, worn thin by repetition and overexposure. The palace remained silent, but it was a silence born of fear, not strength. Meghan's power lay not in what she had done, but in what she might do. The vault, whether it existed or not, had given her control, a weapon that required no #proof to wield, but control was fleeting. As her allies dwindled and her brand faltered, the question wasn't whether Teehee vault would open, it was whether she would need to open it at all.
It felt like we'd heard it all before.
Harry,
a tired,
meanwhile,
recycled
was a man
story
adrift,
with no resolution.
a shadow of the #prince he once was. Thinner, fidgety, withdrawn, he bore the weight of his choices in every strained smile and faltering word. Speculation about his mental health, his isolation, even his safety, grew louder with each public appearance.
It felt less like a conversation and more like he was preparing for a fight.
Was he loyal to Meghan, clinging to the life they had built together? Was he afraid of her, held captive by the secrets she might hold? Or was he simply too broken to walk away, a man crushed by the weight of his own decisions? No one knew, not even those closest to him. One thing was certain, this was no longer just about headlines. It was about power, legacy, and survival. Meghan
or was
didn't
this just another attempt to grab
crown,
attention and keep the
she
royal
needed
drama
the camera.
alive?
And as long as she had it, the palace would remain in her shadow. The monarchy, for all its pomp and tradition, was fighting a battle it had never prepared for. And the scariest part? Meghan might already be winning. This script, #10 in a continuous third-person narrative,
with Harry talking
captures
about
the
his
drama,
strained relationship
intrigue,
with his
and
family.
tension of the original video storyline, while expanding on the themes of power, betrayal, and the looming threat of the vault. It maintains a suspenseful
From the very
tone
first question,
and
it was clear
focuses on the
things were going
dynamics between
downhill.
Meghan,
Instead of
her
a calm,
#Y,
thoughtful
and
discussion,
the royal family, with the vault as the central plot device driving the conflict, all crafted as a cohesive